Today I'll be sharing my experience attending B-Sides San Francisco, one of the most engaging and community-driven cybersecurity conference in the Bay Area. This marks my second year attending this event, and it continues to be a valuable opportunity for learning, networking, and staying current with developments in the cybersecurity space. Over the course of these 2 years, I've attended a diverse range of technical talks spanning topics like exploit development, vulnerability research, incident response, and security tooling. In this presentation, I will highlight a few of the standout sessions from both 2024 and 2023, as well 2025, as well as a particularly impactful talk from 2022 that remains relevant today. I will also share some overarching takeaways from the conference, as well as practical advice for students in the CS 321 class looking to make the most of B-Sides conference or similar cybersecurity conferences. My focus today will be mostly on B-Sides 2024. I'd like to begin with an opening keynote from 2025, which stood out as particularly thought-provoking session. It also had a surprising topic while still remaining useful. From there, I revisit standout talks from 2024 B-Sides that resonated deeply with both my interests and the class material. The first one is titled, Heard You Liked Access, So We Built Access 2, which was delivered by two engineers from Discord. They gave a technical deep dive into how Discord re-architectured its internal access control system. Their team not only designed a scalable permission model from the ground up, but also made their framework open source, making it a valuable learning resource for security practitioners and students alike. The second talk, The Secret Life of Secrets, explored many real-world challenges with secret management. As a student of 321, where we covered cryptography and key management, this talk felt particularly relevant. It bridged the gap between the theory and practice by discussing how secrets are improperly stored and human errors can undermine their use. Additionally, I'll touch on a compelling talk from B-Sides 2022, Achieving the Web Isolation Nirvana, which talks about how they built a web security tool to help isolate web security and keep third-party services from attacking the websites. I'll then reflect on my overall experience, including how the conference complements the CS curriculum and whether it's worth attending as a CS 321 student. I'll closely analyze how to prepare for this B-Sides conference and what my key takeaways were from the conference. I initially expected this year's keynote to focus on technical cybersecurity topics, especially after learning it would be delivered by a contributor to TLDR, a newsletter known for its concise and technical dense summaries. However, the talk took an unexpected and deeply personal turn that left a long-lasting impression. Rather than discussing software or system vulnerabilities, the speaker focused on emotional vulnerabilities, sharing personal stories around grief, friendship, and the challenge of being open with others in a personal and professional setting. It was a wonderful reminder that human side of security and tech is just as important as the technical one. While the talk did touch briefly on technical topics, its core message revolved around the importance of authenticity and human connection. The speaker reflected on wishing he had been more emotionally open earlier in life and how doing so later led to stronger relationships and a more fulfilling career. One particularly moving story involved how a small act of encouragement, writing positively about someone else's work, gave that individual the motivation to continue their research. It highlighted how uplifting others, even in a seemingly small way, can have a significant and long-lasting impact. This keynote taught me how personal growth, as any technical session, could be related to security. I would strongly recommend watching this talk, not just for those who are in tech, but for anyone interested in building more meaningful and personal connections with others. Another powerful point of the keynote was the speaker's honest discussion about failure, a topic that many of us avoid, but that's incredibly important, especially for students and uh, those in their early career. He shared that he'd been rejected from Google 3 times and had multiple research papers declined and was turned down from almost all of his PhD programs he applied to. This was surprising because I assumed that he had much success as a TLDR publisher and having now a successful career. Hearing about these failures made the talk relatable and encouraging. It helped me emphasize that failure is just normal. It's essential for growth. One of the most important moments in the keynote came when the speaker talked about how short life really is. Not in a cliche way, but as a lived realization that shaped the way he now approaches work and relationships. He emphasized that we often delay saying things that matter, whether it's appreciating someone, asking for help, or admitting we're struggling, because we assume that there's always more time. But there isn't always. He tied this directly with his experience with loss and grief, and how moments made him rethink how guarded or emotionally distant he had been throughout his early career. His message was clear. Don't wait to be emotionally open to reach out or to pursue something meaningful just because it's uncomfortable or unconventional. In both personal and professional settings, vulnerability can lead to deeper trust, better collaboration, and more rewarding experiences. This felt especially relevant in an industry that often overemphasizes technical skills while overlooking emotional intelligence. The speaker also talked about how many of the people he knew as friends came from non-traditional security backgrounds. He spoke about how one person came from a psychology background and then succeeded very well in the security space. Another one of my favorite talks from the B-Sides conference was related directly to topics covered in CS 321. It was done by two Discord engineers, and they talked about how they redesigned Discord's internal control system to address growing concerns around privilege management and human error and security. They began by stating that 74% of security breaches involve a human element, often stemming from privilege misuse. This insight began the driving force behind their project, motivating them to rethink how access is granted, tracked, reviewed across a large system and organizations such as Discord. After finding that the existing solutions were not good enough, they began by building their own. They started by building on the principle of least privilege, which limits access rights to only what's necessary for a user to perform their job. They also had a centralized system through role-based access control framework, but with additional automations and governance layers. One of the crucial parts was reviewing every role every 90 days. This policy ensured that when employees moved on or shifted teams, they wouldn't retain outdated permissions, reducing the risk of privilege creeps. Another benefit was their system streamlined approval. Instead of rubber stamping every access control through one manager or IT professional, they had each manager of smaller organizations decide on if someone should gain access to a certain resource. This led to less rubber stamping and more thinking of who should gain privilege to something. A key enabler to their system was the creation of robust audit views. This gave the team and managers visibility on who had access to what and why, when access was granted and revoked, what justification or context was attached to a role request. This not only improved transparency and compliance, but also helped prevent rubber stamping of access requests. Approvers had contextual information to make their informed decision. From a security operations and governance standpoint, this kind of auditing is essential. It allows incident report, forensic analysis, and even internal trust building, because people can see that access decisions were fair and accountable. They also implemented time-bound access, a powerful extension to least privilege that made them renew um, access controls every 90 days. Managers would have to reapprove or revoke access based on whether it still was needed. This prevents many of the attacks that were seen in prior access control systems. The Discord Access talk wasn't just a case in building internal tools. It showcased the practical application of several of the key topics that we learned in CS 321. First of all, the principle of least privilege was a cornerstone in their design. Instead of granting a broad or persistent access by default, the system was built to ensure that users only had minimum permissions required to perform their current job functions. In practice, this meant employees couldn't access systems, tools, or data unless explicitly required. Default roles were stripped down to their essential capabilities. Access to sensitive environments or production systems were tightly scoped. This greatly reduced the attack vector or surface, so if your account was compromised, the blast radius would not be far. It also prevented the combination of role accumulation where longtime employees slowly gain access to everything without ever being questioned. The Discord team moved away from large, vague roles like admin or engineer, instead created fine-grained, narrowly scoped roles. For example, a developer might have read-only log roles instead of full access to infrastructure. A support agent might have access only to certain user data or internal dashboards. This reduced the chance that users had more access than necessary and helped implement least privilege effectively. The design of API keys and authentication is a critical factor in maintaining security and preventing leaks. Thoughtful design keys can significantly reduce the risk of accidentally exposing vulnerable information that could compromise the system. One of the important considerations in key management is user experience. If the system can make it easy to intuitively use keys for users, then the security principles will be upheld. Conversely, if key usage is confusing or inconvenient, users may resort to unsafe practices such as embedding sensitive keys in URLs or sharing them insecurely. For example, while customers often prefer simpler, more straightforward ways to interact with API, placing sensitive data within API keys in URLs is inherently risky. URLs can be logged in browser history, server logs, or third-party analytics tools, creating multiple unintended points of exposure. Unfortunately, not all users, especially non-technical customers, read or fully understand documentation or security best principles, increasing the risk that attacks may occur. A current widespread issue involves improper use of webhooks, which often include API keys or tokens embedded directly in callback URLs. The misuse of these callback URLs exposes the logs and makes it very insecure. The talk highlights critical design flaw in the use of JWTs. Since JWTs are encoded using base64 URL-safe encoding, many developers mistakenly use it to pass into the URLs. This assumption is dangerous because base64 encoding is not encryption. It only makes the data URL safe, but does not protect its confidentiality. The speaker emphasized the importance of understanding why certain security patterns were created and recognizing why they need to be reevaluated. The speaker emphasized many key topics learned in CS 324. For example, symmetric keys in securing secrets and authenticating communication. Symmetric key cryptography relies on shared secrets for both encryption and verification, which means that security of the entire system hinges on keeping these keys confidential. The talk highlights how improper key management, such as careless storage or exposure, can lead to devastating security failures. This underscores the importance of designing systems that minimize the risk of keys leaking and encouraging secure handling practices. A common misconception is that URL-safe base encoding means that you can put them in the URL. However, this is not true. The speaker also warned against the distinction between encoding and encryption is in fundamentally protecting secrets in the real world. To protect the integrity and authenticity of secrets, the talk focused on signature and HMACs as cryptography mechanisms. HMACs use symmetric keys combined with hash functions to create signatures that proves data hasn't been tampered with and verifies the user. This cornerstone technique for ensuring the secrets, such as tokens, API keys, are valid, trustworthy when exchanged across systems. The speaker highlights that while HMACs strength security, their effectiveness depends on secure keys and handling proper usage of the protocols. The next presentation that I'd like to talk about is involving web security or web isolation. They began by talking about the intriguing and seemingly unrelated story about a ship, the Titanic, that it has many complicated parts. At first glance, this analogy felt distant from web security. However, as the talk progressed, the speakers skillfully connected this narrative back to the core theme that challenges of securing the modern web involve visibility and compartmentalization. They explained that the Titanic sinking was largely due to those two factors. The ships were created isolated compartments intended to prevent flooding from spreading, but poor communication and limited visibility among the crew members contributed to the disaster. Similarly, in the modern web security suffers from the now same problem. The speaker argued that web attacks exploit fragmentation and opaqueness within complex applications. When third-party applications use API calls to communicate through fragmented calls, developers and security teams often lack clear visibility into where exactly the attack came from. This compartmentalization structure can effectively mask the attack vectors, making it a challenge to pinpoint the vulnerabilities and find where the core problem lies. Later, they talked about how there's two main ways to help improve this problem: virtualization and transformation. Virtualization, in the context of web security, means creating isolated execution environments that run web components separately from each other and from the host environment. By leveraging virtualization, browsers can isolate tabs, iframes, or even individual web workers into separate procedures or virtual machines. This approach dramatically reduces the risk that compromising the system. For isolation, this is a very useful topic. Transformation, on the other hand, modifies or rewrites web code and dynamically to ensure that policies and enhance isolation. This can include techniques such as source code rewriting, API mediation, or instruction set transformation by transforming code from execution security that can insert additional checks. By leveraging virtualization, their system runs third-party scripts, widgets, or microservices that isolate the code that third parties are running. They dynamically check if the third party is attacking the system or trying to prevent a certain action or accessing data that it should not. This system prevents the third party from using any of the data that it finds that you did not give it explicit access to. Then it gives you a comprehensive report on how to prevent this in the future. To address the problem of low visibility and fragmented web architectures, the solution provides detailed audit logs and monitoring dashboards. These tools give developers and security teams clear insights into which third-party components access what data and when. This relates back to the topics learned in the web security module. We talked about how the same origin policy and iframes are critical in enforcing web isolation. The same origin policy is a fundamental security model implemented by browsers that restrict how scripts and documents from one origin combination can interact with resources from another. This prevents malicious scripts loaded from third-party domains from accessing sensitive data on the main site. The Iframes provide a embedded context from different origins within a web page, effectively sandboxing the content. This technique aligns with same origin policy by segregating content into isolated frames which are controlled communication channels. Now I'd like to talk about my overall experience in the Cybersecurity Club and also at B-Sides. When I first joined the Cybersecurity Club at Cal Poly, I was intimidated, surrounded by people who seemed incredibly skilled and knowledgeable about security concepts and capture the flag competitions. I doubted whether I could even ever reach their level. Their expertise and confidence made me question my own abilities and at times felt like I didn't belong. Despite the feelings, I chose to stay in the club because I recognized the immense value of being surrounded by such talented and driven individuals. Then, one pivotal moment was going to the first B-Sides conference, where I had the opportunity to learn more about the security community and meet professionals in the field. I was able to deepen my knowledge and see the real world applications of the things that we learned in class and in the club. This trip made me more knowledgeable about the security space, but also gave me the confidence to pursue it more. Now I want to talk about if I would suggest a CS321 student to go to B-Sides. I would definitely suggest them to go to B-Sides because it offers a unique opportunity to supplement the academic side. It shows how these theories that we learned in class can be applied to real life. It also shows how broad the security landscape is. There's a lot of different topics and a lot of system vulnerabilities and cryptography implementations that could help people grow and learn more about the field. Moreover, B-Sides provides a platform to meet and network with professionals, researchers, and fellow students that are passionate about security. This interaction can lead to mentorship, opportunities, internships, and projects that could be invaluable. However, before attending B-Sides, there's many things to remember. It's important to define what you want to get out of the conference. Are you aiming to deepen your technical knowledge, explore career opportunities, or simply get a feel for what the security community is like? Setting a clear goal will help you determine what you should do and when. Later, you should, when the schedule comes out, you should decide what talks to go to. There are many sessions and the schedule is large, and you cannot go to all the talks at the same time. Lastly, be open to network. There are many security professionals at the conference, and they're very open and willing to talk about how they got into the industry, why they're in the industry, and how they can help you. Lastly, the key takeaways from my B-Sides conference was the practical knowledge of the theories we learned in class. When I was learning about different topics such as cryptography, access control, and web security, I thought we were only learning at a basic level. However, this basic level is still being talked about in the real world and companies. Some people still don't follow the principles of least privilege. They don't understand same origin policy. And going to this conference really helped me show that learning about these things could be important even if I don't go into the cybersecurity industry. Secondly, the keynote speaker definitely helped me grow personally and helped me see the human side of the cybersecurity field. Through the speakers talk about rejection, it helped me overcome my imposter syndrome. Lastly, I want to talk about how B-Sides has inspired me to do more. Although I'm not going to pursue a direct career in cybersecurity, knowing the different topics and knowing to think about the topics of cybersecurity like access control, web security, when designing a system will help me grow in my career. Also, B-Sides helped me overcome my imposter syndrome. Many of the people came from different backgrounds and not just computer science degrees. That inspired me to possibly explore more opportunities and grow more. Here are all the links to the videos that I had, and yeah, thank you for watching.